Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Amber and this is my film and book haul. The first film is Little Women. This was based off of the book by Louisa May Alcott. You have some very well-known people here, including Kristen Dunst, Winona Ryder, Susan Sarandon, and even Christian Bale, who is very, very young in this one. I loved this film a whole lot. I love the book also, and I am very happy to finally have this in my possession. This is about four sisters growing up and just their relationships with one another and finding love. And Lone Survivor, this stars Mark Wahlberg. This is about four Navy SEALs who are on a covert mission to neutralize a high Al-Qaeda operative. They have to enter into these mountains where they will find the operative, but in doing so they end up in a moral dilemma where they have to make a decision, and the decision that they make leads them into an enemy ambush. I absolutely love this film. Mark Wahlberg was amazing, and I'm very happy to have this in my collection and looking forward to watching it again. The third film that I picked up is The Monuments Men. There's a lot of people that you should know one way or the other, including Kate Blanchett, Matt Damon, Bill Murray, George Clooney. This is about a group of men who are brought together from all different walks of life to create a team where they will go and rescue pieces of art that were stolen by the Nazis. I absolutely enjoyed this film. It was humorous, it was uplifting, it was just really wonderful, and I loved how all these men kind of had to learn to deal with their differences and the kind of banter and humorous situations that they get themselves into at times was really wonderful. I also liked that it was a part of World War II that isn't really known a lot of. I've never heard about this part of the war, and I am appreciative that something new has come out that deals with the war. And I know this was made from a book, and I do plan to read the book. It's just that at the time I wasn't reading nonfiction. I really wasn't into nonfiction, but recently I have been getting more into nonfiction stuff, and so I am definitely picking it up at some point. I also got 42, the Jackie Robinson story. This stars Chadwick Boseman and Harrison Ford. Chadwick Boseman plays Jackie Robinson and Harrison Ford plays the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers. This takes place in 1946 when Branch Rickey decides to take a stand against the Major League Baseball's color line. He signs Jackie Robinson onto the Dodgers team, and they both have to deal with the backlash from the league, the other players, and the public eye. I thought this was a very inspirational story. I loved both Chadwick Boseman and Harrison Ford in this film, and it was a film that I've been wanting to buy ever since I first watched it. I also picked up Flubber, that stars Robin Williams. This is about brilliant but befuddled Professor Philip Brainerd, who tends to get so into whatever invention he is currently making that he'll forget everything else, including the most important date, which is the date of his wedding. And for the third time, he is so into his inventing that he forgets to go to his own wedding, and she breaks up with him. But in the midst of his inventions, he finally has invented a new energy source, which he calls Flubber. But is it enough to get back Sarah? I loved this film as a kid. I watched it a lot, multiple times. It's hilarious, and I'm totally looking forward to rewatching it. The last film that I got is also the only film that I haven't watched, and that is John Wick. This is, of course, about John Wick, who is an ex-assassin, and he gets attacked by two young thugs. They do not know who he is, and they wake up the beast, basically, and he decides to exact his revenge on them. I am very excited to watch this. We've been trying to get to this film for quite some time, but gardening, trying to get our yards ready for the summer and the next year has just been taken over. So hopefully this Sunday I will finally watch it. And now on to the books. I was given one book. I got one from Walmart. I got 11 books from my library bookstore and 14 from Barnes & Noble. The book that I was given was Unbroken, a World War II story of survival, redemption, and resilience by Laura Hillenbrand. As you all know, I did buy her book Secretariat, and I still haven't read it as of yet, but I am trusting my instincts that I am going to like her writing style. So this is about Louis Zamperini, who in his boyhood was an incorrigible delinquent, and as he grows up he starts to channel his defiance into running and sports and stuff like that. And when World War II begins, he enters into the Army Air Force and he flies airplanes, and at one point as he is doing his duty he crashes into the Pacific Ocean and ends up having to try to survive on the ocean. And I am looking forward to reading this. A lot of the reason why I chose to pick this up was because of the film that is coming out or has come out, and also because I am very interested in this story and I'm hoping that I will enjoy it as much as I am believing I will. The book I got from Walmart is Chris Kyle's autobiography titled American Sniper. He was the most lethal sniper in all of US history, and he was named the legend, and so I've been very much interested into hearing his story and what it was like for him to have that weight on him, being called the legend and all of that. The first book that I got from the library bookstore is Women in Love by D.H. Lawrence. This is about Gudrun and Ursula. These are two characters that were in his book The Rainbow, which I have not read, but I don't think it's necessary to read that in order to read this one. So these two women live in a Midlands colliery town, and Ursula falls in love with Birkin, who is a self-portrait of Lawrence.
And Gudrun has a tragic and demonic... And Gudrun has a tragic and
demoniac affair with Gerald, who is a son of the local colliery owner. These four people kind of clash in thought, passion, and belief, and so he is talking a lot about modern society and love, and I'm very interested in seeing what his take on that is, because this, I believe, was written in the early 1900s and a lot of changes were taking place then, and so it'll be very interesting to see what he has to say about all of that. Next is Sliver by Ira Levins. This is a psychological thriller, which was basically all I needed to buy this book. I've been wanting to read more psychological thrillers, and I love anything that has to deal with psychology, and so this is about a successful single career woman who moves into a upper high-rise apartment, and she ends up being watched by the building's owner through some sort of technology, and I am very intrigued. I haven't heard a lot about this, but there is a reviewer that I trust, and she says that this was pretty good, really good, and so I am very excited to read this. I also picked up The Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. This is a psychological study on a young Civil War soldier who is dealing with the horrors of war within and without, and I am very intrigued with that fact. It's very short, so I'm very curious as to how he's going to put all of that in such a short amount of time. I've only read one other thing by him. It was for a class, and it was called The Open Boat, and I was intrigued by it, but it wasn't something that blew me away, so I'm hoping that this will be better for me. The Catcher in the Rye by J.G. Salinger. I forget what this is about. It's been quite some years since I tried to read it the first time. I definitely surprised myself by picking this up, but I have been thinking about this book for quite some time in the past year. A lot of people have been reading it recently, and it's gotten me to think about the fact that I didn't get far into the book before giving up when I first tried this one, and I know a lot of it had to do with the protagonist. I really didn't care for him, and I'm not sure if it's going to change or not, but I do want to actually finish the book before I have a finished opinion on it. I just want to be able to say I have a an opinion and to just have it focus in my mind so that I can say one way or the other, because I can't, because I didn't finish the book. So hopefully I will be able to get something out of this time. Hidden Empire by Kevin J. Anderson. This is the first book in the saga of Seven Sons. This is a sci-fi novel. Mankind has colonized the worlds of the Spiral Arm. There's 3 branches: the Terran, Hansa, Star-dwelling, roamers, and telepathic green priests. And we are certain that the galaxy is ours for the taking. And scientists have discovered a way to change gas planets into suns. But what they do not realize is that these planets are actually occupied, and they don't realize it until they are forced into a war with the aliens that actually occupy those planets. And our arrogance, of course, once again gets us stuck in a situation that we really shouldn't have gotten into in the first place. I am very interested in this. It sounds very fascinating, and I am looking forward to reading another sci-fi novel, and hopefully this one has better success than my last sci-fi novel, because that one really didn't hit the hot button for me. Another surprise buy, and that is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I believe everybody knows what this is about, and I really don't think that the logic behind the science is all that logical to me. DNA from that long ago just doesn't make sense that it would last that long. But, you know, I'm just hoping that reading it I will understand more about the logic, the science, and hopefully that I'll be able to enjoy this. I'm reading it in the hopes that it'll be entertaining. From the library, I picked up An Irish Country Doctor by Patrick Taylor. This one I was able to get for free because it was on the free stand. And this is about Barry Laverty, who is coming from Belfast. He is moving to a country village, very small village, can barely find it on the map, called Ballybuckle, and he's trying to find a job there. And so he ends up working with Dr. Fingal Flaherty O'Reilly, but he can't decide if he's a quack or not, and he's struggling with country life, and he somehow finds love. And it's based in Ireland. I will pick up anything that has to do with Ireland.
It's just, I'm very excited. I'm very excited.
Another book that I am very excited to have in my possession is The Gravediggers Daughter by Joyce Carol Oates. This is about Rebecca, whose father took them to America, fleeing from Nazi Germany in 1936. They moved to a small town in East New York, where he becomes a gravedigger and cemetery caretaker, be a history professor, and so it definitely makes it harder for him to become a gravedigger. Not only that, there is local prejudice against them, and because of their own emotional frailty, it all leads to a tragedy. And because of this tragic event, Rebecca decides to leave home and go explore America, and it's a journey of self-discovery for Rebecca, and I'm very interested and intrigued by this book. I am so excited to finally have it because I've been wanting to read this for at least 5 months, and I was quite surprised to see it at the library because it was the one book that I didn't really expect to see. So I am so happy, and hopefully I'll be able to read it in the coming year. A River Runs Through It and Other Stories by Norman MacLean. The title story, I'm not quite sure, but I believe it's about a father and 2 brothers' relationships, and they fly fish together, and it's about nature and their relationships with one another and stuff like that. And that's basically all I know. I'm not exactly sure if even that's correct, and I apologize if I'm getting it all wrong, but it sounds interesting, and I know the title story was made into a film. At least I believe that is the one I'm thinking of, but it's quite short and 50 cents, so I was very interested in picking this up because I'm looking forward to picking this up at some point. Next, I picked up The Red Tint by Anita Diamant. If you don't know about the biblical story of Dinah, Dinah was one of Joseph's younger sisters, and her story was only told in a couple chapters, and it's not even told in her voice, in her perspective. And I'm not really going to tell you what that story is about because that takes a long time trying to describe it all. But something happens and crazy things ensue after that, and it always kind of bothered me that it all happened in such a short amount of time, and you don't really understand why they even tell the story if they're not going to give it the proper time, and to have the respect for the fact that Dinah, you know, had this happen to her and all this stuff. It's just really bothersome. And so Anita Diamant takes her story and tells it through Dinah's eyes, gives her a voice, and I'm definitely intrigued and looking forward to seeing how Anita Diamant handles her story. The last book that I got from the library bookstore is Accordion Crimes by E. Annie Prolex. It's kind of hard to describe the synopsis, but I'm going to try. So, an accordion maker from Sicily moves to New Orleans with this dream of opening his own music shop. But shortly after arriving, he gets lynched, and the accordion is the only witness to the crime. At least that's what I think. And the accordion is taken from owner to owner, and the accordion tells the story of what happened to his owner or something like that, but he also witnesses his other owners' lives, and so I'm not really sure if we're being told the story through the eyes of the accordion or how is it being told. I saw this book several times in the past 3 to 4 months and I would pick it up, put it down. I really wasn't sure if I wanted to read this. I was kind of confused by the storyline. I just, like, this sounds a bit too confusing, and I'm just not sure if I'm going to be able to understand or get the idea behind this. But I finally caved because it is intriguing. It sounds intriguing, and accordions. I'm very intrigued by accordions, so I had to pick it up. The first book that I got from Barnes & Noble is The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I have read his novel Crime and Punishment and also a short story collection of his, and I've been wanting to get into another novel of his. I actually was looking for another one, but I ended up with this one, but this one also sounds just as interesting. And so this is about Prince Michigan, who I guess is the idiot. He's also like the almost comical innocent Christ figure of the story, where everybody in Russia is sinful and just doesn't have any faith or a belief system. He's the only person that has a belief system, has faith in something, and so Fyodor Dostoevsky makes him Russia's redemption or savior or something like that, and I'm very intrigued by this story, and hopefully I will enjoy it as much as I did his Crime and Punishment. The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. I am very, very excited for this. This is Middle-earth creation story. It's definitely exciting to see this world's creation story, and so I'm just so excited. I haven't as of yet finished The Lord of the Rings, so until I have, I won't be reading this, but I am very excited to pick this up once I have. The Once and Future King by T.H. White. This is a combination of the 4 books that he has written about Arthur. I am so excited. I've heard mixed reviews about this, but I don't care. I'm hoping that I will like it at least. I love Arthur, and I've been wanting to read something of his story, so hopefully this is a success for me. Next, I picked up The Princess Bride by William Goldman. This is
The tale of Princess Buttercup and her one true love.
very wacky, wackadoodle, weird, crazy story. I wasn't really sure if I was going to pick this one up or not because I did not like the film when I was a kid. If the film did any justice to the book, I'm guessing that the book is going to be pretty close to that kind of wackadoodle, and so I'm not really sure if I'm going to enjoy this, but I wanted to read the actual story and see what it's all about. And I'm hoping that since I haven't watched the film since I was a kid, hopefully the fact that I have grown older, things do change, that I will at least enjoy the book. The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. I read the Fahrenheit 451 and I absolutely enjoyed that. And I've been wanting to read more of his stuff ever since. I've been going back and forth between picking this up and another one of his. I forget which one it was, but when I was at Barnes & Noble, this kind of popped right into my hand, and so I have this one. This is a collection of 18 short stories that were all tattooed on a man's back, or skin rather, and I'm not really sure if they're all connected. I've heard several people recently talking about this and they act like they're not connected, but I thought that they were, and I actually thought this was all one story. So I am not really sure, but until I read this I won't know for sure, and I am very, very excited to read this. The Homesman by Glendon Swarthout. This takes place in the 1850s American West. A group of men and women whose minds and hearts have been broken, trying to survive in a very hard place, need to be taken from there all the way to the east, where there's a sanitarium there waiting for their arrival. But there needs to be a homesman, which I'm guessing is basically a guide, and no one will take them. So Mary B. Cuddy decides to take the job on herself, but of course she does need help, and so she hires a lowlife named George Briggs, and they end up working together to help these people survive their journey to the east. I am very excited to read this. I did not know it was a book when I watched the trailer for the film. I am so glad that I did not watch the film as of it. I am very excited to read this. It sounds very intriguing, and also I really, really want to watch that film. Tommy Lee Jones. I think that in itself says enough about why I'm excited for that film. So I have to read this soon. In the Woods. This is the first book in the Dublin Murder Squad series that Tana French is writing. I think that these books are about the squad, but I think it's specifically about Cassie Maddox, who is a detective there on the squad. But in the first book, Cassie Maddox is partnered with a detective, Rob Ryan, who 20 years earlier was, as a boy, with two other of his friends, were playing in a woods, and something happens. They get kidnapped, or I'm just not really sure what happens exactly, but he and one other were the only ones to survive the incident, and now as they're trying to investigate the murder of a 12-year-old girl who was killed in the same woods, he has to face his past. Very excited to read this. I've heard a lot of good things, and I've been just wanting to get this book and read it for so very long, so I'm just so freaking happy that I have this book. The next book I picked up is A Novel of Sliver Girl by Therese Ann Fowler. This is a fictionalized biography of her life and marriage to F. Scott Fitzgerald. I've been wanting to read this for years. It's always been so expensive, and finally I found it at Barnes & Noble for a very good price. It was on a deal, so I grabbed it up quick as quick. I do not know if there's actually any non-fiction biographies of Sliver Fitzgerald's life. If there is, I would love to know, because I really would rather read that first before I read this. But if there isn't, this is as a deal as it's going to get. So, as I said, I am really excited to read this. Then I picked up The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. As you know, I think it was in February that I read this. I borrowed it from the library and I fell in love with it, so I've been wanting to have this. And when I was at Barnes & Noble, I saw this. It was only $5, so I had to pick it up. Then I picked up The Cookies Colleen by Robert Galbraith. You would better know the author as J.K. Rowling. I really don't understand why she chose to write under a pseudonym, considering the fact that right after it was published and everybody started picking it up, she told that it was by her. I really didn't get the logic behind that at all. But either way, I'm very excited to read this. It's a mystery novel, and I believe it's going to be a series. This book introduces you to private detective Cormoran Strike, who is a war veteran and dealing with physical and psychological wounds from the war that he fought in. He is hired by a supermodel's brother after she is found dead and is believed to have committed suicide. I am very excited to read this. It sounds like it's going to be dark and gritty, and I'm hoping that I'll enjoy it as much as I enjoyed her other adult fiction, The Casual Fantasy. I know it's completely two different things, but I am just as excited because I fell in love with J.K. Rowling when I read The Casual Fantasy. I enjoyed her with Harry Potter, but I loved her with The Casual Fantasy, so I'm expecting a lot from this one. Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I was actually quite surprised at myself for picking this one up, considering that I really didn't care for it when I read a portion of it for a English course in high school, but I decided that I wanted to give it a try again because I really didn't read the whole book, and I was a teenager who didn't really care about reading classics and stuff like that, so I believe that my mindset is completely different, and hopefully I'll be able to get something out of it. Also, I thought the guy was basically a nut job, and I just didn't understand why he would do what he did. So hopefully I will understand his logic much more now. Next, I picked up The Corrections by Jonathan Franzen. This is about Enid and Alfred. They are a married couple, and Alfred is slowly losing his sanity to Parkinson's disease. And Enid's one wish is to bring the whole family back together for one more Christmas dinner before he completely loses his sanity. And each of the children who are adults now and living on their own and dealing with their own life problems and issues. I'm guessing it's going to be very hard for her to get them together, and so it'll be very interesting to see how she does that and what that dinner is going to be like. So it sounds very interesting. I do have his other book, Freedom, waiting for me to read, and I know it's kind of crazy for me to have gotten another one of his, but these are two books that I've been very excited to read for quite some time, so it was just something I just had to be, and I know this was also another one that was on a sale there, so it was worth it for me. Tarzan of the Apes by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is the first 3 novels in his Tarzan series. I didn't know it was a book. I didn't know there was a series at all, and so I'm very, very excited to finally read the actual and original story. The last book that I am hauling today is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. I've tried to read this one years and years ago, and I also tried to read his book called The Hunchback of Notre Dame. There is no way I'm ever going to try that one again. He's an author that just rambles. Like, he's worse than Leo Tolstoy, and it was awful. I just couldn't bear how every other chapter was just minute detail of the city, and I get what he was doing, but I'm just like, this is really not that important to the actual story. Can we please move on? When I picked up Les Miserables years and years ago, it was in an unabridged version, and so I knew when I tried to read the first paragraph that I was not going to be able to read that book at all. And so now I have an abridged version, so hopefully that will help. I watched Les Miserables for the 3rd or 4th time. I love that film so much, and it just kind of kicked me in the butt to actually pick this up again and read it. I am determined to finish this one. I would have just borrowed it, but it would take me forever to read, and I feel guilty for keeping a book for that long. And I mean, I know other people are probably not going to want to borrow it, but I feel like it would be better if I could just own it and I could take my sweetie old time through it and, you know, work it. And it's probably going to take me at least 2 to 3 months, I think, because this is a chunker of a book, and I don't know how I'm going to go about dividing the readings, so we shall see. But I am looking forward to at least having this accomplishment under my belt. That is it. If you made it all the way to the end, I thank you. Thank you so much. If you've read or watched any of the films that I mentioned or books I mentioned, tell me down below. Just no spoilers. And thank you so much for watching, and keep smiling.